Okay, I am now recording the meeting, so we'll go ahead and start up. Welcome to the May community meeting. As we were just discussing, please don't ask questions about like tournament bans and stuff like that. But we'll be happy to answer questions about most anything tournament committee related, so long as it's stuff that we can actually answer. So specifically stuff around tournament bans, tournament reports, or anything with information that can't be publicly revealed. Save it for something in writing. As for other questions, stuff about the tournament scene in general is welcome, but may not be prioritized in these meetings because um, those can be discussed basically anytime. These are more for anything tournament committee specific, but happy to talk about other stuff in the tournament scene generally. Just Roxy. Hi, everyone. I have a question I'd like to ask. In what direction the tournament committee plans to develop the new concept of filtering and custom screening, and whether we can expect strict and maximally accurate compliance criteria? As it seems to me, the current description is very vague and can be used for evil by both the committee and the hosts. Um, I'm really unsure what you mean used by evil. I think Stage is probably the best person to answer that question, as a lot of this is around probably pertaining to things like skill issue bot and some other stuff like ETX.
Yes. So my current understanding of our stance on the filtering is that, it is something we will support, but the bar is quite high as far as, what the developers of these tools need to do in order to be compliant. Specifically, we require public database sets, which basically means if you are using any like data to generate these rating values, we kind of expect stuff like that to be made transparent so that we can and other third parties can validate what your tool is doing. But yeah, I am curious what you mean as well about like the evil or like if you want anything clarified, like if the rule is too vague, I'm happy to explore that as well.
My assumption as far as using for evil, at least on the part of tournament hosts go, is probably like deliberately making up screening systems that will remove specific players from eligibility, and that will just not be in line with the criteria for use of these systems. So I don't think that'll be allowed. I am also very confused by the TCOM doing evil with this though, because I'm not really sure what we would be doing that would be evil, frankly.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean as well. Like I think in our heads right now, like this, okay, so first of all, no tool has actually, you know, reached the point of compliance and has been allowed by us for use in badge tournaments, like deliberately so far, under this rule at least. Um, so yeah, like excluding specific players still isn't something we want to see. I know like the current systems out there, like SIP and ETX, there's usually some kind of metric or value that is created as a result of the input data. So usually you have a large set of match data, you generate ratings from that. I think what we would like to see is like, if you have like an algorithm or something and you have or a host wants to use like a range to target a specific skill range, that's something I think we do want to see, assuming the tool is compliant. But yeah, I see you're maybe typing something out, Roxy.
We are looking for more replicability, if that's even a word, is sort of the way that I would describe it. It's the same reason we ask for accurate seeding information and qualifiers, formulas, and everything to be laid out in front of us. The inherent problem is not with the bots and these systems themselves. It's that for most of them, there is no way we can take this data, which is player data, and be able to run it through and replicate it 7 months after the tournament has started and we finish our badge review, and get the same data when that information is not available to us regularly. So it's not a problem with the systems themselves, it's how much we have access to what they are putting out there. And a lot of the times these systems are more complex than just a catch-all one formula, and that unfortunately means that their documentation needs to be significantly more broad, which a lot just don't have right now. So the day that someone steps up and puts a database up and a documentation packet that allows us to do that, that's the day that these start to become allowed. But
the TLDR is we should be able to take whatever MP links you provide, use the formulas with documentation you provide, and get the same exact ratings that are displayed for whatever tournament is using that filtering process. Until that becomes a reality, whatever system is not going to be allowed. And that is exactly the same level of transparency that we require for qualifiers, right? We need your qualifiers MP links alongside the formula you're using in order to validate that your qualifier results are actually accurate results. And that's the same exact level of transparency we require for bots as well. Because they're used for the same thing. They're used for seeding.
Yeah, the transparency and the reproducibility is the key, because there was one tournament that I reviewed. Can I? No, I cannot. Oh, can
it's up to
can I?
you if you want to say what tournament it was. That's really up to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was what flashlight tournament in Catch, and they have used the criteria of like taking account only PP from the flashlight place, and so I checked their website, and they have provided everything that the wiki requires. Like it was reproducible, and the data set was updated monthly. They have stated that in their website. So I chose I accept that tool. That's one example for this.
I mean, I think a good way of going about it. I don't want to cut you off, Dio, but
No, go ahead.
we did run into a tournament recently that was reviewed where the results from qualifiers were actually wrong. There was a mistake made through those results in there, and it affected placements and seedings, and it wasn't major scale, but it did. And that's why we want to have these systems in place so that we can verify this information, because we do go through the seedings and we do double check them, and we do make sure the numbers are correct. And if not for the formulas properly being documented and verifiable, that wouldn't be possible. So it's rare, but it does happen that we do need the seeding methods, because mistakes are inevitable. We're all human, and we can misinput a formula, and we can flip a number around, and that sort of thing can happen. So,
and the last thing, maybe before I can hand back to Dio, about this is it's also very important that the maintainers of the tool are very active, like in this process. So we're more than happy to work with you guys, and it's also very important that the database replicas are made available historically as well, because if we need to go back in time at the time that this tournament used the tool in order to verify the outputs. We can't use just current day data, because that will not be reflective of what they use in the past.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to the next thing. I know Bullmaster Flex had a bunch of concerns about general production. I think they're writing up kind of a summary right now about those. We have past email of it also. Oh, there we go. Okay. Someone's been doing GFX for World Cups, many other tournaments for years, and before OS, designing in Call of Duty, etc. OS production has gotten way better, and that all falls on designers. And the main World Cups do have a large budget to pay everyone. They're also insanely organized. They've been pushing for the same production value. At the community level, they've been pushing for the same production value, but they lack the production staff budgets and ultimately rely on their usual people who will end up burnt out. Yeah, go ahead and explain in voice chat if you want to. Here, I'll just invite up. We can talk about this for a little bit.
Hello. Awesome. All right. So yeah, sorry, I suck at typing, but so yeah, that's a little background on me. So I want to set first just like get these things out of the way. One, the World Cup team is like their own category because of the budget and the staff that they have and like how far ahead they're organized. And two, I want it to be very clear: this is absolutely not a jab or a blame at tournament staff in any way, because ultimately they're trying to run tournaments and it was not their responsibility to learn how to manage production and design and editing. Like, they're trying to just run tournaments. But after seeing the rise and fall of designing through Call of Duty and seeing what that led to, I'm seeing some similar patterns at the community level where tournaments are punching and striving a lot higher than I guess they're set up to. I'll use my examples with this year. Like 5WC would be a good example because I did a lot of design work for them this year. I went into this tournament just, I'd helped them last year. I came in, happy to do it, not realizing the amount of workload they were pushing to do this year. And they did a lot, and they did some excellent, excellent things as that team. But by the end of that tournament, everyone was unbelievably burnt out. And it's a problem because that's just one community tournament. In a year full of tournament and productions, there's so many more customs to be made, tons of more tournament graphics to be done, videos. And it's tough because we only have so many more community members in certain categories coming in, whereas we have tons of illustrators. But let's just say storyboarders, for example. If you look at the World Cups, a lot of the main projects and main storyboards you see are the same, like 8 or 9 people, whether it be Nafi or Copperteen. So eventually those people are going to be burnt out, or they're going to retire, or they've done stuff and that tournament falls through. And ultimately, I think we need to work on a way as a community to try and better help everyone do production in a way that works for everyone. And I went through with Polly. I had a meeting with Polly, and we ran through a lot of ideas that could work, whether it be different types of contests. Like Locust is a great thing that gets a lot of different people involved. Or it could be more contests other than just like illustration or fan art contests to help build up the base of the community. But also, I want to help a way to help like tournament organizers and tournament staff, I guess, better understand like what's expected with production, because it's a totally different playing field, and a lot of people are good at it, and a lot of people are trying their best. And I think ultimately that's I hope that explained it a little well.
I guess
I can take.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as like my journey in the tournament community historically, and Shaduz might want to speak to this a little bit later and add on to what I'm going to say, but my journey in the tournament community for the most part has been designing. As much as I've done other things in the community, really my primary focus has always been design. And when I first joined this community, the expectation of tournaments for design was obviously not there. It was certainly not up to par in today's world. It was like the graphics is my passion sort of era of tournaments, where you would open up Photoshop or GIMP or something like that. Somebody would throw text on a background that they made a starburst pattern out of, and then they put everything together. And slowly, there started to be more and more designers that came into the community that wanted to do higher quality work, or people that had experience doing designs before. And that, I think, really started to pick up maybe at like 2019-ish, where we made efforts to make higher quality badges and animations, and we started to get access to things like the Laser Tournament client, and World Cup started to do production alongside tournaments like Corsace, where we had like UParts and other things that started to kick into gear. And I don't in my mind, the expectation for community tournaments has never been about making things inaccessible. The general consensus for your average community tournament should be to put out the best product you possibly can, with what you have. And there should be no expectation of monetary requirement to make that happen. And that sort of falls on the community of designers or even the tournament hub where a lot of staff are, to pull those designers who are newer and who are willing to do things for either cheaper or for free to light, because that shouldn't need to be a barrier. But tournaments also shouldn't expect to need to be the next, four-digit World Cup, five-digit World Cup, Course Ace, level designs every single time, right? That's sort of like I've been hosting this tournament for a long time and I want to take it to the next level. And that's when I start spending money, or I start getting extra designers in and illustrators and that sort of thing. And I think that's a range of, how much do you really want to put extra time and money into your designs, rather than a requirement that we will ever push on the community. Now, speaking to the number of designers and storyboarders and that sort of thing, I think there are a lot more than people would realize. Even if you just looked at Mapper's Choice Awards is like a bad metric, but it's a starting metric. There were 37 separate users put up for Grand Storyboarder alone. That's a lot of storyboarders, especially for the number of tournaments that are looking to put together a storyboard, because most of the time the tournaments that are doing that are the ones that are getting original songs and custom art and doing all that other stuff. But it is accessible, and there are people around, and you just have to know sort of where to look. So it's less on, I think, the community pushing it and more people making it known that they're available and that they are there to do things. And I think making an area where that is more accessible has sort of fallen by the wayside. The Tournament Hub has never been like the place to find designers. And I think a lot of people don't actually know that servers like the Artist Hub even exist. And that server doesn't really even cover like VFX and storyboarding either. So I think it's sort of on the community, if I break it down, to like get this barrier broken through and to make things more accessible and go, because you can do such a wide range. I mean, I've had tournaments that I've spent hundreds of dollars on for designs. I've had tournaments that I've spent $0 on for designs, and people generally, it doesn't change the enjoyment in the end for the most part. It's cool to see fun graphics. It's cool to have an awesome video. It's really nice to get, an original song and a background, but it's really all optional. And as a player, it's nice, but I've never felt like it was something that would like put me off from playing a tournament if they didn't have professional grade VFX and visuals. Like, it's Osu. I'm expecting something. I'm not expecting to be blown out of the water, so it's almost like a nice surprise when I am. I feel like if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll chime in also, just from a like non-designer host perspective, because I basically started hosting right around the same time ish, where because like you started designing for my second tournament, Chillier, but my first tournament was GFX that were JoJo is my passion graphic design, and yeah, I don't know, like I think the only time that I have paid for GFX is like specifically with Perennial. That's like the only time. And I just don't for any other tournament. And that's because I don't have any reason to. None of my other tournaments are the flagship high effort tournament, right? And I think it's like more about, okay, this was said a little tongue-in-cheek by Cytosine, but straight up, like, if the expectations are for every tournament to have really high-level graphics, then people are expecting the wrong thing. I'll say that. I think, yeah, I mean, that's the Yeah, for large tournaments, I think the expectation of higher production value, better graphics, something original, be it custom maps or original songs, I think is somewhat warranted. But if we're talking about players expecting high level graphics in other tournaments, that's not great. I guess I'm a little confused then about like what exactly the issue is. Just like fears of burnout for all of the people who are most involved with those larger tournaments.
I think it's more like the expectations of those larger tournaments. I guess when I'm thinking community, I'm thinking just like below World Cup. But like I guess those are considered World Cup. But I guess I was looking at it from more of like a official versus like
When
official,
you say,
so to say.
when you say community,
POV.
I think like basically every tournament that's not the World Cup. So
Yeah.
I think specifying
Oh,
like
okay.
I would say specify like high production
Like
value
staple
tournaments
community
because
tournaments?
other people or staple or something because people know what you're talking about when you say those. But
Okay, fair. So I'll say definitely like assume 5WC, 3WC, perennial, like those
A
type of
tournament
tournaments.
that's here every year.
Exactly. A mainstay with production value and usually has some sort of customs. Like I think obviously the production of those tournaments and the direction is excellent. And like I watch like every reveal. I love seeing all the reactions to all the customs. Like people definitely love that and they appreciate it. And it's like definitely the future direction for these bigger tournaments. It's more the fear of like how do I put, like how to organize production because I feel like it's a little different than just organizing the like actual tournament side of things. Like I have a little experience on that side with like obviously there's pooling, there's sheeting, there's like getting scheduling ready. Whereas production, like I've had such different experiences across tournaments that I feel like it's more I think we need like a community hub for like discussing expectations, like how's the best way to go about like putting out projects, how's the best way to like go about choosing like your designers for your needs or for like the budget or like value of this tournament, so to say. Because I've had like big tournaments that like did like a little bit and then have like worked with their team, and then I've had big tournaments that have tried to go all out, tons of customs, production on everything, like videos on everything. And it just feels like everyone's kind of like there's no real like central meeting point. They're all just trying to strive to be like World Cup production value, if that makes sense.
Can I get a follow-up question then? Are we looking at an issue on the hosting side here, or is the designing half of the community like where? Because I think my response to this will differ based on like where you think most of that issue lies. Is it the designers that have a problem with it, or do you think hosts have a problem?
Right now, it's more like I'm not sure it's fully at the problem stage yet, but it's something that I
problem's not the
like
right word.
saw happen. Like I saw this happen through Call of Duty, and I've also seen some of those Call of Duty production people end up in the OSU scene, such as like Nathan, who became a BTMC's editor for a while. The guy Scape. I don't know if he did production work in OSU, but he did tons of production stuff in Call of Duty. But ultimately, like the production value and the expectations in Call of Duty got to a point. Every team strive to be like the next FaZe Clan or do all certain production of those montages, and eventually, players retire, people get burnt out, and there isn't necessarily like that second wave of people to come in. Whereas on the tournament side of things, like the playing and organizing side of things, like they've definitely had people to pass the torch to. I guess you could use like 5WC as a perfect example of that, being like stage hosted that for a while. And ultimately he ended up passing the torch, and now Lumen Logic was hosting that. And you have these other people to come in and fill and new players over time, whereas production doesn't necessarily like get that. And at the same time, it's also like tournament hosts have been like hosting these tournaments, and production at this scale is such a new thing that I think it's like kind of two concerns more. Like the A, how are we gonna like get the next generation of people to come in and replace the previous ones for especially for categories that don't have as many people, and the other thing more being like how can we make a hub for tournament hosts and staff to like better understand like what goes into the production, what goes in, like how long certain things take, how long certain things don't take. Because like someone like Chillier understands, being someone who's done design work, but I'll say someone who doesn't do it might not have as much of a like understanding on how long certain projects take versus others.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I think that's like part issue of designers, right? If we're speaking on the context of like turnaround, there will always be new designers that are eventually going to come into the community. There's going to be, you know, all the designers that we have today that are all absolutely fantastic at what they do. They weren't there when I started designing in Osu, you know, 6 or 7 years ago. None of these people were here, and they will cycle in, and people will be drawn to this eventually, and then, you know, there will be people in there. And if we're worried about, you know, the main designers burning out, then, you know, that's a conversation we've had years and years ago too, with tournament hosts and commentators and referees, and we're like, wow, all of these amazing tournament staff are retiring or stepping away from the game. What are we going to do? And in reality, there's always going to be someone else. This community is way bigger than anyone thinks that it is and really knows that it is. And there's going to be that next person that steps up to the plate, that you give a chance to do good work. And I think that is something that we can always rely on with a community oriented game like Osu, where there's going to be someone who has the passion for it. And they might not be at the same level when they start, but they might get there over time, and that's just part of building the community to where it needs to be. You know, OWC teams go through it all the time, right? You drop all your good players, and then you do a rebuilding year, you know, 2 years later, right? Where you start to work your way through and find those players again and bring yourself back to where it was. So nothing's ever completely consistent. But I do think that there is value in adding a design section to the wiki, and I certainly would be open to, you know, creating a thread for that in here, dragging as many designers as you want to have the conversation. And yeah, maybe just putting together a list of like, you know, here's what a general illustrator would probably ask you for in terms of time for a map background. Here's how long it would take a designer to come up for a tournament design, an animation, a storyboard, etc. And maybe that makes it more accessible for hosts where, you know, we can't really go listing out prices, right? One, because it's not appropriate, and two, the range is so big. You know, you can hire a designer to do graphics in this community for free. You can pay hundreds of dollars. It really depends on what you are looking for and the product that you really care about getting, you know, for what you're looking for, or the quantity too. But timeframes, or even just examples of what people are looking for or ways to get into it, a link, I'm 100% on board. Why not add a section for it? It could literally never hurt us ever. So I mean, I'm on board with it. I'm not sure if anyone else on the committee has thoughts about this, but I do think it's becoming prevalent enough that it is something we should look into in terms of helping people as more guidance rather than like a rule.
Yeah, and if there's
I think
any
that sounds
like
good.
way I could help, I'd love to help like facilitate whatever needs to like help organize this. Like I'm
We did
all
it
in
with
to help.
seeding methods in this server. Actually, we created a thread in this server where we a couple of tournament committee members spent weeks discussing seeding methods and writing up wiki entries and doing all that, and there is no reason we can't do the same thing. Get anyone in here that we think has a great opinion for it, put something together, merge it up, and just have extra resources for the community. There's no reason to prevent doing that.
If I may interject, I also just want to say it doesn't necessarily need to be on the wiki either. I invite anybody who does anything related to production, has a good feel for it, and wants to write up a guide to do that. We have on the tournament committee website, we have a list of community resources, and if you make a guide on how to approach doing production for your tournament, if you write up a guide for that, we will absolutely take a look at it, and if it's, you know, even decently good, then we will add it to that list for anybody who wants to reference and look at. It doesn't necessarily need to be on the wiki solely. There are so many ways that if you want to help, guide people along, by writing a guide, by writing, the initial steps that organizers can take, I think that would be very, very valuable.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. I could definitely
But
start.
if you want to make it official, let's make a thread. Let's make something in here. Let's start discussing it. Why? More is good.
Absolutely. Bullmaster Flex, I invite you to, write up a guide yourself if you want, and then we can even, simultaneously work on setting up a wiki page, seeing how we can, structure it, do that. We'll get a thread started.
Right now, I'm doing it right now.
Right now, actually, Chili is doing it right now. We'll get a thread started right now, and just get on that. We did it with
Awesome.
with the seeding wiki page. Yes, this is not going to be a project that's going to be finished within a month. This will probably be iterated and iterated and iterated again, until we have something that we're all satisfied with, we're all happy with. But once that's there, it's going to. I do foresee that helping a lot of people. And anybody who wants to join that thread in OsaWiki, please feel free to do so. And
It's in the chat.
just right click on it and click join thread, and you'll be in there. You can take a look at what's being discussed. You can voice your own opinions, and just help out however you'd like.
Awesome, that's great. I'll definitely get started on some type of like a guide or like references. Like I'm gonna probably first hit up like a couple of the people from the World Cup team, like Sakura or Polly, just to kind of help me gauge. But I guess the first thing I'll try and do is to put projects on like this wiki or on this thread and like explain like what went into it and like how long it took. So I'll do some research to find out more of the details on that. But I guess that will be a better idea for everyone to be like, what goes into this type of project versus what goes into this type of project.
Yep. No rush for it. Let's get it fully fleshed out, make it a comprehensive guide, and then we'll get it everywhere. As a related question, I saw Entolf ask in chat. There are a large number of hosting guides available in the community as of right now. You can actually find a lot of them on the community resources page on the tournament committee website. There's also a bunch that are pinned in the forums. If you, of course, want to make another one, absolutely go ahead. There's no reason to not have more guides, because some of them are older, to be perfectly honest. So there's no reason to not make more modern ones if you think that you've got information that's useful to anyone in the community. Type it up, put images in, put it together, make it something awesome for people to read, share knowledge. That's how we've gotten to where we are today.
Yeah. I mean, and thanks to Hy-Vee, we have a lot of very useful filters on that page as well to find quickly what you're looking for. You can just filter for guides, and you'll just get the whole list of guides.
One thing I do want to touch on that I think was brought up earlier in this discussion was like the feeling of, the production value for these community tournaments is just continuing to go up and up and up. And I also agree that I feel like there is an expectation that like, if some of these tournaments, like even very casual tournaments, don't have, nice looking graphics that are clearly, paid for, that it just doesn't really carry the same appreciation maybe by the community, and so I do think hosts do feel the pressure of like, okay, it has to be better than the last iteration, it has to look nicer, so on and so on. So I think that is just something I wanted to touch on and like acknowledge. I don't really know what like the solution is, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
The solution
I have
is...
one more point with that.
Oh, go ahead.
So I want to say, like, from most designers in the community's perspective, like, I don't think most of them definitely some of them care about like getting paid on some projects, but I can use me as an example, just as someone who's done both the World Cup work and community work of all levels. Like, I end up doing a lot of work for free, or like dirt cheap because I love this game and I love this community. Like I've been here for 10 years. I wouldn't have been here for 10 years and doing as much as I can if I didn't. So it's like it's tough from a designer perspective because it's like we don't want to not help out and make this game better and make the production look awesome because it also reflects on us as well as like this is everyone's work together. And also it's like when we start working on a project, I think expectations is a big thing. Because you can go into a project thinking it's only this, and then it ends up being 10 customs instead of one. That's like an exaggeration, but I think that would be it would definitely help out to just like flesh that out.
Expectations are good, especially for illustrators. I mean, I'm working with an illustrator right now for a project that I haven't released yet, but for a single character specification sheet alone, we have a 3-page Google Doc with colors and accessories and poses, gestures, write-ups, everything. There is a lot that can go into designing things that people don't realize. Theming, matching styles, especially if you're doing something for a map, you have to sort of almost like it's hard to describe, but you have to like feel the song to get an idea for what like background would match for it almost. And that's something that I think it's why we have good designers. It's really easy to lean on a good designer who is able to see that vision, but it also requires a good amount of thought and work on the part of the host. And I think that's the part that the guide is going to help with is here are the things you need to think about as a host when commissioning a designer or asking someone to do something for you that they are likely going to look for, or that would make your life and their life easier to have ready ahead of time. Because if you don't have a vision, they don't have a vision because it's your tournament and it's your song and it's your idea, and you need to be able to translate to that to them. And sometimes giving them full creative freedom is a good thing, but a lot of the time that just means that it's going to take them more time, more effort. It's going to be a little bit slower. You're going to have to iterate a little bit more often, and it's going to be a slower, more painful process. So it's more like alleviation than anything, right? You can make everyone have a good time with the process, and then you can both have fun seeing the product and how it comes together and, you know, sort of works through. Same thing we do with artists for songs. Give them a spec, give them the general idea of what you're looking for. You know, it's more creative freedom there, but like as long as both parties have an idea, that's sort of what makes it all come together.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for giving me that space. If you need to kick me, feel free.
Yeah, of course. I'll go ahead and knock you down now. How do I move to audience? There we go. First time doing that.
You got it.
Yeah. I was gonna say one more thing on this topic generally, and this is probably gonna be very quick, but I think for a lot of with the like pressure that hosts are feeling for better graphics, particularly in the wider community for like general community tournaments, I think the solution is just to not make every tournament have ridiculous graphics, right? Like if every tournament has good graphics, of course players are going to expect better graphics for all of their tournaments. But if that starts feeling like an obligation and is requiring monetary cost on the part of hosts and all of these other things that make hosting a tournament more of a dread than something enjoyable, then the solution is to kind of bite the bullet in the short term and not pay for graphics or create these, you know, really amazing graphic suites for every tournament under the sun, and just have, you know, basic decent graphics, right? Not every tournament needs to have a full animated graphics suite. That's just not how every tournament needs to operate.
And that's sort of what goes in that like thread, right? Is to badge your tournament, there is no expectation of like, I'm just gonna pick an example, like VFX, right? There is no expectation of having a single animation to badge your tournament. Should you have a main design? like, yes, right? You know, if your forum post is blank and your streams are default tournament client, that's still badgeable. There is, if you couldn't find someone to do designs, like, will your tournament look the best? No, but you can still run a good tournament with blank stuff. It's not going to look good, but you know, that's what we want to make sure that
it might look a
everyone
little
is
funny,
aware of.
but
Yeah, it might look weird, but like if you can't find someone to do that and you don't have like some way of making graphics now in the modern world, go download Figma, go do something, put text on a background, like do something, don't have nothing. But we're not going to deny your badge because you don't have the ability to put together graphics like that. It's never a barrier to entry in this community.
Chili, your thoughts on having 0 graphics for Perennial this year? I think that'd be great.
God, I would save me 800 hours of work for this year.
I might be tempting
All
him. Hold on a
full
second.
reveal.
Let me backtrack.
Listen, man, I got to worry about United States Cup first.
Oh, Lord.
But honestly, like, what we could even do, pull together a couple designers in the community, and this is an idea that I actually had a while back. Template graphics. Put together a zip file of laser backgrounds, static backgrounds, a post or whatever. People can edit, like, they can like upload an image, change text, and change colors, and then export them and bring them back. Cytosine, that might have been me. I did that about 6 years ago now. I don't think I uploaded it in too many places.
I think they were just like
it was
basic.
something I didn't publicize.
I think they were just basic dimensions for like cutting edge backgrounds and things like that, right?
I did make one that was like actually a design that had a PSD and like a file because anyone could just open it and do it. But it might be like, I don't think it's something we want to normalize necessarily because we don't want every tournament having the same graphics. But it could be a good way of just being like, if you literally have nothing, ask. Or maybe, like Bull was saying, a server where if you have nothing and you know there is nothing, let's have a server of people who are generally available to just do something, even if it's just a banner, because you're going to have nothing otherwise. Let's put together a big server and group of people that are willing to just pump something basic out, something simple.
Also, one thing to point out is that, forum posts and main images and stream overlays are something great to have in tournament. But in player perspective, we look at the sheet, Google Sheet, all the time. So if you want something efficient, then you should design your sheet first very well. Like, sheets should be great, and then you can like go over the level of forum post and the stream overlay. Like there has been some tournament that had a pretty great graphics, but like the sheet was not really pleasurable. So.
Please use templates. If you don't have working spreadsheets and you don't have a dedicated spreadsheeter, please grab a template. There are so many amazing templates made by good spreadsheeters in this community. Just use one. They all have instructions. They all have a settings tab. If you have questions about them, most of the people that made those templates are still around on a daily basis. Ask. There's always going to be someone willing to help with that sort of thing.
I think I DM'd Ice Dynamics during Roundtable for help with some like SQL in a spreadsheet. Like just randomly like, hey man, got some time to write some SQL? Be good.
Like, and don't feel like you. And again, the same thing goes for spreadsheets, right? A reminder, or maybe a notice to people here who haven't been around for quite a long time. We used to register for tournaments on the forum post. That's where we would register. There was no spreadsheets. There was no, like, this whole era of having these fancy, amazing spreadsheets that pull everything to one area is such a modern thing. If your spreadsheet is text in cells and we can still read the information that is on there and it's at least laid out in a manner that is usable, that counts, as long as it's all there.
Yeah. I remember the first tournament I ref'd, after qualifiers, I had to take every individual score from qualifiers and manually copy paste them onto a qualifier sheet because people did not have sheets that pulled data from MP links yet. You had to, as the referee, you had to manually copy paste every single score. That was something.
I did not have it. Yep.
Um,
Back
We've-
in my
we've-
days.
we've gotten a little off topic. Where's the next question if anyone has one? I think Cytosines was answered in chat, and I didn't see any during that whole discussion about like largely different stuff. So if anyone did type one out and I've missed it, please like reply to your question and we can discuss it now. In the meantime, I guess I'll just talk about like we can talk a little bit about like sheeting and graphics generally. Like, I don't know about other hosts, but every time I have graphics, I just make the sheet myself and theme the sheet after the graphics that I have and like put a main image on the sheet. Is that the prettiest looking sheet ever? No, but it certainly looks better than default sheets and does like a pretty decent job of getting the point across. And especially if you can kind of work with similar fonts and styling a little bit, it can work very, very well. Because the like really fancy graphic design sheets are very, very hard to do for a lot of people and also extremely time consuming. So if you don't have somebody kind of dedicated to doing that, it's a little bit tough. And yeah, agree, Shadoos. It's like there's some sheets that do a little too much, I think. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, like have you ever tried drawing a pentagon in a sheet and like hexagon? Like
yeah, no.
surprisingly, that is possible, but like that just lags out the sheet a lot, and yeah, basically what she's saying is what I'm agreeing. That's why I also recommend designing your sheet first, because it is pretty easy to enter, like easy to start. You can learn very basic concept of like matching colors, matching fonts, and like design scheme, and then you can like go further and start like doing actual GFX and having animations and thing. So yeah, that's like designing the sheet is pretty great starting ground. It was for me at least.
Hey, do you want to
Yeah,
go
look
over
at-
that question from the forum?
Yes. So we do have one question from our Q&A question submission form. This is from Antolf. So there's a couple questions here. I guess we can go one by one, or maybe I'll just read it all out. So the question starts like this. With the new increase in tournament committee members, how is the team going to be assigned requests? Will the requests take the same amount of time? And will there just be a change in volume of requests being looked at? Or will the time, I guess, per request decrease with how this is being handled with these new members? So I think the question is asking, like, how are we distributing work amongst the new team members, and is that going to result in lowered response times?
If anything,
So
I think it's
yeah.
been. I think we've just been able to get faster responses out. Part of that is due to like ticketing. Part of it is due to, I think, just having more people to answer things immediately, right? If you have more people around, there's a pretty decent chance that somebody is able to answer a question or give a perspective immediately. There are more difficult questions or like larger matters that need the full team's attention, or at least a good portion of the team's attention. And when those happen, usually we go to a vote anyway, which takes the same amount of time regardless if there's 8 people, I think we were down to, or like 9 people before we added new members, or whether there's like 17 members, right? So I don't think it has really increased response times at all. For more timely stuff, I mean, that's the same as before, right? There's always going to be a few people who cannot answer something very quickly, but there's still going to be a good portion, not necessarily a set number, but a good portion of people who are around to answer things relatively quickly. And I think the whole reason we added a bunch of people is we're just getting way more requests. Like tournament committee is just doing a lot more. So
I mean, there's better consensus with more people too, and if we're talking about like increases in efficiency, the website is sort of like the solution to that, right? Click of a button, updating things, having it all publicly displayed, making sure that it's all in one spot there for everything we need. Like that's our efficiency increase. Less button clicks, less places to navigate to. We don't have to go to 1, 2, 3 spreadsheets. We don't have to go back and forth, finding threads and finding things inside of, the internal channels. We can just pull up the tournament, click a button, and it's all in there for us. So anything that falls onto our side there is totally like reworked for this modern system. In the terms of screening, there's really no, way that we can tell you how long a screening is going to take. At most, it should be taking 2 weeks. We have it on the wiki. It really does depend on how many screenings there currently are. You can actually, I don't know if, I think it's publicly viewable. If you filter by status as support request received, usually that is all tournaments that are waiting for screening. That list is a little inaccurate right now because it hasn't been updated in a bit. I can get that updated right now. But that's sort of your bar of however many are in support requests received is generally who's waiting for a screening list. And that can sort of give you an idea of if there are 6 tournaments on that list already and you are number 7, maybe you want to, wait an extra week before starting your tournament because it could potentially take the full 2 weeks instead of, the 5 days you've requested. And there are certain, kind of leeways on that process. So I think that's more a process of like, prepare yourself. Like for hosting a tournament, I always recommend just doing the 2 weeks, even if you think it'll be faster. It saves you the headache. It's an expectation we have set on the wiki, so it's really easy to plan for. So there should be very few scenarios where like your tournament needs to be delayed because of screening. That's sort of where like the efficiencies go in there from adding members and the website and everything coming in. I did actually see another question. I want to answer it. I know it's like sort of tangential to this, but I noticed a couple of people asking about the application cycle and like adding members and receiving responses to applications. I believe we put it on the news post in terms of like who's going to get a like a specific response versus a generic one, and we sort of apologize for the delay on getting out like the general responses for it. But members who made it to like final voting rounds and like the last steps of the process, whether or not they were added or not added, will either have received or will be receiving soon a personalized email with feedback. We just simply can't get personalized emails out to everyone who submitted applications in the application cycle. We are better about getting the individual responses out for just general applications, which you all hopefully know that are open all year with a form. Those will generally receive some more personalized stuff, but because we had so many come in with the application cycle, it wasn't feasible for us to go through every single person and write up a response that we would have sent out for that. So if you did not receive a response yet, you will likely receive one soon, either in the form of the generic one, kind of bringing closure to that process, or for, I think we have maybe 1 or 2 more left at the end that'll receive a personalized responses, I think, and then we'll still run like that rolling addition cycle where if anyone wants to apply and go through that, the form is still up, it's still ready to go. Anytime you want to fill it out, we'll review it. But I want to make sure, because I've seen a couple questions about that popping up recently, and make sure that people are aware that if you haven't gotten the response, that's why.
Yeah, there's a couple of other larger questions in there also.
Yeah. I do see one that looks like a good quick one. This is from Thank You, and they asked, they're basically asking if we will ever clarify different types of like tournament formats on the wiki. So like defining the differences between like double elimination, full double elimination, I guess they're talking about here. Just kind of like helping maybe new organizers understand the process a little more, or the basics.
Yeah, like the draft and Suiji tournaments, or maybe like auction tournaments are
Mhm.
surprisingly something familiar in the OSU tournament scene, but not in other esports thing. So, I mean, yeah, like, but but I think like it's not really far from what general the tournament is, like single elimination, double elimination, round robin, Swiss stage. That's for me. That's just
Right.
everyday thing, right?
Yeah, those are very common as well. Like I'm thinking, if I'm a host running a tournament, I would probably want to do some research on that. But I mean, it could be a good thing to have, but also, it's also kind of like common tournament knowledge, not really specific to OSU. So I don't know if it would be right to have that on the OSU wiki.
Oh, the schedule. Yeah, the scheduling is really far from other esports, right? So like we are trying to cramp up every possible matches in the weekends, and that creates the week-based system for double elimination. Like usually, like you just set the best of in other esports, like and then you just run everything. But like we have
Mhm.
different map pools for every week, and the section for each week, like what round should be played in each week. That's like we get the a veteran host can answer that very great, but yeah, the new host will find it pretty difficult to like. Okay, the second losers round, second round should be played in second week. Like why? That could be confusing.
I think
I think that's a good idea, actually.
yeah, I think one thing that's maybe a little challenging for something like that also is that for double elimination, I think the difference between normal and full is pretty simple, and like what double elimination is pretty simple. But other formats like group stage, how do you seed group stage, Swiss stage, how do you seed Swiss stage, how do you run that, are like there's so many variations of it that other sources, which are comprehensive already, have become pages and pages long. Trying to replicate that on the OS wiki ourselves is a very tough matter because there is so many there's so much detail that you can go into with all the different kinds of formats that are available. I think something like you two have been discussing that's a lot more helpful is like, how do formats translate to OS? How do common tournament formats translate to OS? Or what are the OS specific formats that we see? Things like draft and Suiji that are a lot more niche and specific to this game rather than to tournaments in general.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree that that would be a good addition to the wiki, like the how they apply to OS specifically.
Mhm. Yeah, so like, yeah, I am actually using Swiss format for my tournament, and yeah, it's kind it is very hard thing to pull out as well as group stages, yeah, because like, yeah, there is a lot of things to consider, and yeah, I think the main focus, if we were to make some kind of common format systems into a document, then one of our focus should be how to schedule and how to allocate the rounds into each weeks. I think that's the most confusing part when hosting the OSA tournaments. And where we think a lot. Yeah.
Am I? Is it kind of? This is gonna sound a little BM, but I think, is that information not readily apparent from playing tournaments? Like, before I hosted, I played some tournaments, I staffed some tournaments, and that information was like readily apparent to me. Is that not like largely readily apparent to people just from like playing and staffing other tournaments? Yeah, something staffed
I
before
think it
hosting,
would be
but
if you
like,
are a player. Yeah, I guess that, yeah, maybe we're assuming here they haven't, like, they don't have much experience before hosting.
Yeah, players do not think very hard about how things go. I think I think that answers that, because like, I give a very careful work that the format I'm newly trying is not too confusing to everyone, because if I mess up with one sentence, if I don't like announce the one thing, then the whole, like, the half of the player base will be practicing different map pool, or different, like, thinking they don't have potential while they have, like, yeah, it should be simple. I mean, it's also BM from me too, but you should, like, it's for general tournament flow. You have to make it simple enough.
Staff before hosting.
staff before hosting. Please staff before host. I staffed for like 6 months before I hosted my first tournament. Like, please just staff some tournaments.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of other questions in here for the question submission. All of these are from Thank You. So if anybody else has questions, please just put them in chat. We'll answer them here, and kind of come back to the ones that are on the form. This one that I'm reading out is more about upper rank limits, and if there's any plan to kind of standardize upper rank limits for tournaments, like if we're going to continue allowing like BWS 2 to 100k tournaments, or if this problem's been discussed. I kind of don't see it as a problem personally. That might sound kind of weird, but the way that I think about it is more like, when I was, I'll use an example from other competitive spaces I've been in. When I was doing debate in university, there were novice, JV, varsity divisions. If you won a tournament in novice, you were automatically kicked to JV. If you won 3 tournaments in JV, you were automatically kicked to varsity. Does that mean that there are fewer tournaments for varsity debaters? Yes, but like, they don't need to play those easier tournaments because they have already won tournaments before. I see tournaments that prohibit people with badges from playing and like rank 2 to 99.999 tournaments as pretty much the same as like JV tournaments. Kinda. Like open rank JV tournaments. Does that make sense? Like Emrek does not need to play the JV tournaments. Malashevsky does not need to play the JV tournaments, right? Are there fewer tournaments for them? Yeah, but they've already won so many tournaments. Who is that? I think I don't see that as really an issue.
And the biggest tournaments of the year will basically always be open rank anyway. So believe me, there is no shortage of open rank tournaments out there. Rank restricted tournaments are certainly becoming more of a commonality than they used to be. There definitely used to be like maybe super saturated 4-digit tournaments and then everything else was open rank. But nowadays, there's so many 5-digit tournaments, there's so many 6-digit, there's so many 4-digit tournaments, and for some of the upper rank range tournaments to cut out, maybe the top 100 or the top 10, like I've seen before, really doesn't make too much of a difference because there's still so many that just allow everyone. Because a lot of people just don't want to deal with the rank restriction requirement, right? Just let anyone register who wants to register and then move on, submit it for screening.
I'm just reading through some of these other questions that we have on the submission form, which is why I'm quiet right now. So just give me a second and then we'll go on to another question. Again, if anybody has any others in the meantime, feel free to type them out or raise your hand, either way.
I think like the worries about 2 to 9 whatever BWS tournament is that the excluded player base are like so too specific. Like if we run like 2 to 9 whatever, then we will have like about 5 players that cannot join the tournament, right? Or is it more?
There's a surprising number of people who are like rank 1 BWS these days.
Yeah.
Because because assuming a BWS system that does not utilize a like year cutoff, so like 2021 plus BWS or whatever, there's a decent number of people out there because BWS is like a log scale, right? So like you just all of a sudden get people with 5-6 badges that are 3-digit or whatever, and they're shooting up toward rank 1 really, really quickly. So I think there's actually more people than you might expect being excluded from tournaments that do like rank 2 through whatever BWS as their rank range. And I personally like I it took a second glance for me to understand the concept of what they were doing with that, but I actually am kind of with you. Like, yeah, sure, fine. Like, you don't want Emrek, Malashevsky, Rectagon, Intercambing, Enri signing up for your tournament to win it for free. I don't blame you. I get that.
Yeah, like it also like there is no adequate rank range to split between the tier 1 players and tier 2 players. That's just I just coined that term, but but yeah, like the rank is too vague, and BWS 2 might be one of fair way to exclude those outliers, like very high in skill. What do we call them?
Yeah, just outliers.
Yeah, outliers. Can we not count 5-digit badges towards in open rank tier based? I actually thought about this, but like let's say you have a 5K tournament badges, and should that count towards the open rank badge? And like there is so many line for each badge, like different from each others. So yeah, that's
I have a question. What is an open rank tier-based tournament? If it's tier-based, that automatically implies that it's not open rank because you're put into a tier based on your rank. That no longer becomes open rank.
It's like Suiji is
Sweegie
no,
is-
actually okay. What if you an open rank draft tournament with multiple divisions? That's tier based in the sense of different like tiers of divisions. I don't know. That's maybe how I interpret that.
I guess, yeah. It depends on, I guess, how you're. It really depends on how you're seeding, right? Because a lot of tournaments like that don't do like qualifiers, and if you're like Sweegie, where you're just taking BWS at the average, I guess that matters. But if you're just running a team tournament that's a tier-based like team tournament open rank, it really doesn't make a difference because qualifiers effectively nullifies BWS entirely if you're doing open rank. So the second you run any sort of like qualifier, play-in, group stage, whatever, like BWS effectively just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think Shu's interpretation is correct. Like, let's say you're like 10K and has skill level of 5K, but you have, let's say 10K badges, and that just shoot ups your rank to 500, which is equivalent to a seed. And yeah, but like I think that's up to individual host discretion because, yeah, it's up to their task to balance them.
It should be noted after this entire discussion, by the way, you can modify the BWS format however you like within reason, of course. You can't just go multiplying badges times like 1,000 so that everyone's BWS 1. But within reason, there have been tons and tons of hosts that have modified the BWS formula, which is a valid thing to do as long as it is being applied to every player in your tournament equally. As long as you're not just applying it to some subset of players and it's being applied to everyone, usually that's fine, right? Like, especially with tournaments that do like decaying BWS where you block badges that were earned before 2021. That, of course, benefits older tournament players who are maybe still active because it removes potentially a lot of their badges. But as long as you're applying it to everyone, it's fair, right? I think the only thing that we really try and prevent is that we're not just applying these formulas to some subset of players within your tournament. And as Nick just said in the chat, there is no expectation of BWS ever being used. You do not have to use it. You never have. It's just a choice people made to prevent, people back. Digital Hypno made it basically against himself back in the day.
Yeah,
BWS
Digital
is
Hypno made it
such a
himself
construct.
actually when he was
Yeah, he literally
like,
nerfed himself.
yeah, he was like the 4-digit with every single badge, winning every tournament, and made it. But like, yeah, it's not an official requirement. You don't need to use BWS for every tournament. It's just in general like really good. If you don't want the same people winning every tournament in your rank range over and over. And
Yes.
this also ties in with something I was thinking about way earlier with all the design stuff. Spreadsheets being used in like every tournament. No one's telling you that you have to use a spreadsheet. A lot of tournaments use websites. I think, even though it has been a bit of a pain, Aaron Tick can confirm Ybin is pretty common in catch tournaments as like a website
Yep.
to host these tournaments. Now you don't need to use spreadsheets. You don't need to use BWS. You don't need. Nothing of this is official, like an official requirement for a tournament to be officially supported.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just always
And
really convenient.
Cytosine, you're also very correct, right? Like changing that that like constant within reason is totally acceptable. And kind of like I said earlier, right? Within reason meaning let's not update the exponential formula to make like half the players in your tournament BWS. But like if you're just changing the constant to be a formula that you think is more accurate, then go for it. The BWS formula was actually meant to be a starting point, and it has been modified since the original version as well. So plenty of differences that people have done. Kiori, very true as well. I've actually seen tournaments do that in the past where you don't let like there have been tournaments that are like, you can't have 2 1 digits in the same team, or you can't have 2 people with over this number. Like there have been a lot of tournaments actually that say you can't have more than X badges on the same team as well. Like you can't have more than 15 I don't remember what it was. There have been a range of tournaments, but yes, you can absolutely do that as long as it applies to everyone in your tournament.
Yeah, that's the exact same concept as like duo cups, allowing like that you need one player from the base country and then whatever they continue with whatever. It's the same concept, just on badges instead of like profile flags.
Yep.
Yeah, also-
combined PP,
also-
combined badges.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, as long as
about
it
to
applies
talk
to
about-
everyone, every participant, you can do anything if it's reasonable.
Yeah. If it's reasonable if you are, my rule of thumb that I would give, right, is if it's applied evenly to everyone in your tournament, it's allowed as a base. If at any point you are questioning whether or not it's reasonable, ask, or it probably isn't, right? Like if you have to question whether or not what you're doing is reasonable, it probably might not be, and that's the point where you maybe ask. But for most things, it's going to be reasonable as long as everyone is experiencing the change in your formula, or the combined PP, or the combined badges, or max rank in a team, whatever you want to use. Yeah, be creative. Not too creative.
You can do
don't be too creative.
Let the
Let's not
creativity
going
run
BWS
through you.
formula, like
Don't allow
Yeah,
anyone
let's
with a
not
badge to
going-
play. Let it run through you.
yeah, let's not do badges to like the power of 12, please. Like
No, it'd be sick,
Power of
actually.
12.
I remember I was shown a
should do.
formula. I was shown a formula once where at like 6 badges you're rank 1 regardless of your starting rank, and then after that, the more badges you have, your rank goes back down. Such a weird formula.
And it all exists too. I mean, even right now, Suigi Spring Cup, which has been running for a long time, but it's going again now, right? Is you cannot have more than 2 players. Now it's draft, so there's no choice in it. But if we did it registration based, the requirement for that tournament would be you can't have more than 2 players in each seed, and you can't have more than 1 player per seed on a team playing a map at once. That's something that, to be honest, you could do in a regular tournament. Suigi just happens to be random draft, but if you did registrations that way, that's sort of the same principle.
Yeah, I've played tournaments like that before that were team formation with tiers, and you had to have Ouija style, only 1 person from each tier playing at one time. Like through the ranks Osu tournament or something back in like 2018 or whatever it was. I don't remember.
Test
little while.
tournament used to do that too. You would register with a team of 4 players for test tournament. The teams that registered as 4s were seeded by BWS average of their 2 highest players, and then teams were put together by drafting an A seed, a B seed, a C seed, and a D seed together into a singular team after that, which, for those of you that are aware, created teams of 16, and there were 8 players on screen per team at one time on stream. And it was very interesting to watch.
Okay, there's a couple of other questions from Thank You that I think we can answer. Tournament review. Basically, there's some old tournaments from before we started tournament review, early 2023, and I guess there are a couple in 2024 that had this issue as well. No links to tournament bracket. I don't remember, when did we start tournament review exactly, if somebody knows offhand. I don't remember exactly.
I could tell you
Been a little while.
if you give me like 3 seconds.
Okay, yeah. Basically, he says in some 2023 and 2024 tournaments, there were some situations where they didn't have links to tournament brackets. The bracket might not be filled to the end or for more than one round. But nowadays, for tournament review, we get like, there's one line in the forum post where the nickname of a staff member is wrong and we need to change it. So Will those
April,
things happen
2024,
again
by the way.
in 2025? The answer is no, because we review every tournament now. So if your tournament is going for a badge and actually applies for a badge, then you will have to have your challenge fully filled out. You will have to have the bracket linked on your forum post or wherever you link stuff. And they will have to follow those rules. And reviewing every tournament ensures that. That's the whole point. So I think for most of the tournaments where you do encounter that, it's from before we started doing fully flushed out tournament reviews.
Yeah, it looks like April of 2023 was when we had like formal reviews started. So
And even then, I don't know if
while
we
back.
checked like how formalized
It
the
was not the
process
same
was, because
checks.
it's changed a lot. Yeah.
Tournament committee was not even originally created for like it's evolved over time and it's completely different.
It's
I
so
think the
different.
moral of the story is before you send in your badge request, give your forum post a once over, give your spreadsheet a once over. It takes all of 10 minutes to make sure that all of your staff is there, and it saves us time. It saves you an email that you need to read and respond to. It will make your badge get applied faster. Everyone benefits just taking the extra 5 or 10 minutes before shotgunning an email in following your grand finals.
Yeah, if there were like the couple of pieces of advice on that, it's like check your staff list because you may have added refs during the tournament and didn't add them to your forum post, and check your MP links for your qualifiers and your qualifier stats and your like qualifier seeding method. And like 99% of emails, if everybody checked those literal 3 things, 99% of emails would not need to be sent, because that would fix the problems with almost every tournament that gets an email.
Also, some of the hosting sheet templates includes the tool that automatically generates the staff string
True.
that can paste it into the forum. So, yeah, try
Alternatively, staff lists don't need to be on the forum post. Just put it on your main
That's
sheet,
also true.
and then you can edit the main sheet and just type their name in. Just put it in one place. It makes it super easy. You put it. I have stopped putting staff lists on forum posts for a long time now. They're for Perennial. They're on the website. For all my other tournaments, they're on the main sheet because they don't need to be on the forum post. They just need to be public, and it's so much easier to just click the cell and retype a name than it is to edit a forum post with flags and everything. Technically, profiles don't even need to be linked for staff lists, nor do flags need to be displayed. That's just extra stuff that people do. And it looks nicer, it is nicer, but you don't need to do that. If we have the names or anything for, identifying who is exactly on your staff and what are they doing, then that's all we need. That's all we need.
Most of the time, you don't even need to manually change the staff if you have it on the sheet too, because I would venture to say most people in here in the modern day have a referee sheet or something like that, where names are just getting picked out of a drop-down list and put onto the referee sheet. Import range that list of names to the front page of your sheet where your staff list is, and then it'll just update itself.
Equals
the
sort
stuff just
of
gets
unique of this list, and then put it on the main sheet.
Yeah. Pick in there. It's so easy. About the linking names part too, if you are not going to link the profiles to your staff members on your spreadsheet, try and make sure that people haven't like name changed or like username reverts are actually the big one, because when people revert usernames, it does not log the old username on the site, and then when we copy and paste the name in because we can't find a match from your main sheet to your referee list and the name doesn't pop up, then we need to go sort of digging around and trying to figure out who is what, and we need to go opening MP links and clicking on names and finding things. So it does get a little bit more complicated. So there are formulas that pull that for you too. If you enter in a user ID and you have a formula, it will pull the most up-to-date name of your referee with a button.
There is also one thing I want to talk about from the reviewer perspective on this. So I noticed, like, even in my own personal reviews and just kind of through the process, we sometimes are quite picky about like updating, username reverts, and like that alone sometimes results in an email. So I kind of want to ask like you guys, like the team, how do we feel about, the strictness of the enforcement on stuff like that, like username kind of aliases where we kind of know it's the same person, but maybe there's like a typo or something.
I would never send, personally as a reviewer, I would never send an email back if there is a typo in a username. If you're one letter off and you can tell who it is, that's different. Usually, for those here, when we send you an email for a tournament review, it's because a staff member is completely missing or it is a completely different name. And that's like 99.999% of like reviews. I don't think I've ever come across a review where it's a spelling mistake.
I think I have sent an email because of the case was not matching. I'm so sorry.
I think we were on that one together. Nope, it's okay.
It
Still,
differs based on reviewer, but it's the same. Yeah. Like,
Yeah. I don't remember.
Still,
I was like, how'd you
yeah.
even catch that? That was
Yeah,
my
actually.
question.
I personally just check to make sure that like all of the names are the same. If they are the same, then yeah, good. If they're not the same, then not good.
Yep. I'm kind of with Shadoo's too. Like, it's something I would point out, but like if that was the only issue in the review, let it slide. But if there's like anything else, usually you just kind of throw it in there, and that's just to get the most accurate information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
kind
do
of
notice
while you're
as-
at it, also
Mhm.
maybe do this because it would look better if this wasn't typo.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
kind of my take on that. Like if there is another issue, I will include this as an aside because if they're fixing one thing, it's not like a huge deal to go fix one other small thing. But I'm not gonna probably go to the trouble for it if that's the only issue.
Mhm. Yeah, and I also do notice some tournaments like if like a staff member has a couple of common names, they might like list the names differently. Like I know one person, Killing Copper, he can go by Copper, Killing Copper, other names. So I guess the consensus is like it should just be their most recent OSU username.
Please don't change your username.
Actually,
Thank
true.
Please
I
changing
think
your usernames.
I mean,
during
personally,
please do not
personally,
call
I don't
yourself
really
hot
care.
dog
Yeah.
followed by a number.
Please do not become Hyok.
I'm gonna become hot dog pear. That's it.
You're
That
gonna
sounds
Pear
you're
is
gonna
not a number.
become.
That sounds
Yeah.
gross.
I mean, I really just to me, if like your username is still displayed on your profile under previous usernames, and we can just see that, then in my opinion, that's usually fine as well. But if like there's no way to find this person anymore because the previous username has been removed, or it's just more difficult to figure out who somebody is, then it starts becoming a problem.
Okay.
But that
There's
could just be me.
there's one more question that I think we can answer from Thank You on the form here, and it's largely about somewhat about like circles in Soul, and more so about like the parsing of formats in tournaments and how we determine format eligibility size. And this is for tournaments like Circles in Soul that were multi-stage. Basically, with Circles in Soul, for those who were unfamiliar, they had an open qualifier followed by a quarterfinals. I want to say somewhat double elimination bracket. Started in quarterfinals and then moved to kind of a ladder bracket at the end or so. And then the two people who made it to the final match of the ladder stage also went to the main event at the LAN and played a ladder bracket there with 4 people who were pre-chosen. That tournament was not badged, and I don't think there was a lot of discussion on it, because I can find discussion in the dev server, but not internally for this tournament. But largely, this question comes down to, can we get clearer wording for tournaments that are multi-stage, so that we know whether or not they meet badge criteria for tournament size. I guess I'll start by talking about like how we've determined format eligibility for other tournaments that are multi-stage or with different formats or unusual formats. Is largely we look at about how many matches are played, as well as the static number of players in the tournament. So for example, just like something that's got a weird format, or like a battle royale tournament, for example, sometimes we'll look at like, okay, how many matches is the winning player actually playing in this tournament if they were to win the tournament? Because in round of 16 double elimination, you're playing at least 5, right? So something similar-ish in size to that number, plus a decent number of players, at least 16, is generally good for meeting the bracket size requirements and tournament size requirements for badge criteria. There's not like a hard and fast process for this, because it's usually pretty rare that we get requests like this. I would say like less than 1 per month. So we don't have a lot of reason to codify that process. And I also don't know how we would, because multi-stage tournaments are also very rare, and usually it is just group stage into a bracket, and that subsequent bracket is almost always already fine by itself for badge criteria. So I'm not sure how we would approach that, if anyone else wants to chime in on this.
Like so for example, there was let's say about battle royale tournaments. Like some of them are actually badged, and what I think the what I think as the proper standard for this kind of like unorthodox tournament format is that the minimum map needs to be played to win the tournament. Like, usually battle royale, the final winner plays around like 40 maps, which is very similar with what you would expect in round of 16 double elimination tournaments. So yeah, you cannot. I think it's mostly like you can't just play 10 or 20 maps and then get a badge. You have to participate in at least 30 maps, and then you have to be paired with some elimination. I think that's where we vaguely draw the lines, but yeah, it's not exact. It is not really heavily discussed from our side, IRC.
Editors of Liquipedia already try to approach tournament tiers from different perspectives. I think a LAN tournament of the level we saw in Korea should be considered separately from the standard 16-player criterion, especially given the level of players who participated.
They already are.
LAN tournaments already are. Yeah.
Rules. Yeah, that has its own rule set on the wiki in the badge criteria that allow for smaller formats because of that exact reasoning. Like, you're at a LAN, it's impossible to have as many people, and if there's still good competition, then like it's just kind of one of those special circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, one of the issues that we encounter when evaluating whether or not a tournament it can be eligible to receive badge prizes is that even if we had an exhaustive list of every single possible tournament format, you'd be able to go through that list and then come up with a format that we haven't accounted for. So we have to somewhat keep the list not way too exhaustive, while also providing enough information to deduce usually whether or not something is generally considered fine. And then, if of course that's not the case and you aren't sure, we have the beautiful ticket system on the website where once a lot of formats have requested, hey, is this format fine? Hey, is this format fine? You'll have an exhaustive collection of different formats on the website, which you can reference as well on top of what is already written on the wiki.
And I feel like, barring a tournament that is clearly like trying to skirt basic competitiveness expectations, like, we're generally going to trend toward either ruling favorably on something or trying to help the hosts find a way to get it to where it will be in an approvable state. I think that, especially in the like recent times, the trend is much more, how can we ensure that this is able to get badged, rather than saying this can't get badged, full stop, you're done.
Yeah, we also have this. We also discuss about like um this addition would definitely guarantee this format of badge and like all of these suggestions. So yeah, although even if we have some standards about like let's say at least X maps and Y stages, there will be like another formats that has also another um value criteria. Then yeah, we at the end of the time we like have to review them one by one. So yeah, open a ticket.
Yeah, I mean, also remember that a couple years in the past, if you wanted to host a tournament and it was a first iteration, unless you had a team of experienced staff, first iterations weren't badgeable purely because you're going to encounter a lot of issues with organization and all that. But that you can try the waters with a format, and then if things run well, you can go for badged. There is no harm in just running a format, hosting a tournament and seeing how it goes before then, when going for a second iteration, going for badge. We don't need to necessarily go back to the times where first iteration tournaments, or new formats aren't badgeable immediately, but it doesn't hurt to just try things out, experiment in a non-badge setting.
I will also say,
Yeah, non-badge setting.
I'll also say,
Mhm.
just because a tournament is putting forward like the comment about a LAN tournament of this level should be considered separately is kind of rubbing me the wrong way. Just because a tournament puts forward really high production value doesn't mean that it is going to run flawlessly, and doesn't mean that it deserves special treatment. Um, there can always be problems. And so I think giving special treatment to tournaments just because they have high production value, or are different in some other way, is probably a bad approach overall. And it's one of the reasons why, while we don't necessarily evaluate things in a vacuum because we understand the complications involved with running things in a LAN environment, um, we also don't look specifically at like how well a tournament is expected to run when thinking about format stuff. That's not something that we do. Okay. Um, unless there are any other questions, I think that's everything that we have that we can answer from the form responses. And it's been about an hour and 40 minutes, so we're probably going to wrap up here in just a couple minutes. So I'll give it like a minute for anyone to type out any further questions they might have, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Take your time.
TCOM IRL meetup this summer, meet and greet.
I'm down. I will be available for autographs.
Who's going? Which one of us is going in the dunk tank first?
I'll
like
go.
like which continent are we going to?
Well, I'm going to-
It's occurring.
we
I
can
was
we
gonna
can
say,
plan it in
Midwest United States.
we can plan it in the Mitten. I'm going there in August. So
Wait. Okay, we have to discuss this not on a recording.
yeah.
Wait, we also wait.
Yeah, like COE is about 3 months left.
COE this year starts on the 20-year anniversary of Osu Tatakae Oendan, actually. Yes, I did rip that from a Doomsday tweet I saw today.
I
So
was
thank you,
about
Doomsday.
to say.
All right, that's a minute. So thanks everyone, and good meeting. Good meeting. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for showing up. We'll see you next month.